Unbroken, the podcast with Madeline Black. Healing through storytelling.
Welcome to Unbroken, the podcast with me, Madeline Black, speaking to incredible people that I have met along my journey that have really been through some tough times, but they have come out of it. And these are stories that are quite traumatic, but stories that will also offer hope. And today's story is no exception. Today, I'm speaking to Laura Dockrill. Laura is an award-winning writer and illustrator. Her first book for children, Darcy Bardock, was shortlisted for the Waterstones Book of the Year prize and longlisted for the Carnegie Medal, as well as her young adult novels, Lorelei and Big Bones, which was also shortlisted for the YA Book Prize 2018. Her previous works, Mistake in the Background, Ugly Shy Girl and Echoes, earned her plaudits like top 10 literary talent from the Thames newspaper and 20 top hot faces to watch from Elle magazine. Laura's writing has expanded to stage and screen. Laura's first film, Goldfish, just received a BAFTA nomination for Best Short. She has been commissioned from the National Theatre, the Young Vic and the Domhnall Warehouse. Laura has written unique work, including immersive tours of archives celebrating the work of both Roald Dahl and Tove Jansson for the South Bank Centre. Her adaptation of Robin Hood was the lead Christmas show at the Watermill Theatre. Her show for children, Dust, is set to open this spring at the Half Moon Theatre. Other commissioned work also includes short stories, scripts and poems for the BFI, BBC Radio, Channel 4 and the British Council. Other commissioned work has seen Laura collaborate with Lush, Oasis, Bacardi, Eastpak, Irregular Choice and British Airways. She has appeared on a host of TV programmes, CBeebies, Blue Peter, Newsnight and BBC Breakfast, to name a few. Her radio prowess spans across the entire BBC network, having performed works on Radio 1 through to 6, including Woman's Hour and Open Book. Laura is on the advisory panel at the Ministry of Stories and has judged many literary prizes, including the John Betjeman Poetry Prize, BBC National Short Story and the BAFTA Children's Prize. Laura's latest 4-part TV drama is in development. Her picture book, Angry Cookie, is currently in workshop at the Royal Festival Hall, and first adult non-fiction memoir, What Have I Done, has just been released with Penguin Random House. That is a lot you've packed in your short years, Mrs.
I'm thinking to myself, I need to get a short bio.
Well, I tried to look to see what I could cut out, but I didn't want to cut any of that. So it's amazing. So welcome, Laura. Thank you so much for joining me. How are you?
Thank you. Oh, I'm really good. Thank you. Very good to see you.
Good. So the very first question that I ask everyone that comes onto the show is, what does the word unbroken mean to you?
I sort of feel now the word unbroken to me would probably be before my illness, and I'm actually really proud that I'm broken now. I think it's Hannah Gadsby who says in her show Nanette, I'm paraphrasing, but something like I
have it written down because I love that from your book.
Oh, do you?
Yes, there's nothing stronger than a broken woman who has rebuilt herself. I've proven to myself that I am strong and ferocious, brave woman I've always wanted to be. I love that line as well.
Thank you. Well, that's exactly it. And actually, I read recently another thing somewhere that said about, I mean, later I didn't manage to put it in my book, but that, you know, that things that are changing, if you caught something as it was changing, you know, growing, it might look to the untrained eye like it was completely destruction, like it was falling apart. But actually it's growth, it's changing, and you do need to sometimes snap out of that shell to regrow.
Well, it was quite an extreme way that you snapped out of your shell, really, wasn't it?
Yes, I did. Yeah, of course.
So, despite being this wonderful children's worker, children's writer, we're not going to speak about that. We're going to talk about your memoir, What Have I Done?
Yes.
Which I have read, which felt like literally you had tipped the lid of your brain open and I had slipped inside and I was on this downward spiral with you. It is raw, honest, heartfelt, beautiful, powerful, tearful, heartbreaking. Oh my gosh, it was a very strong book. Yeah.
Well, I think the fact that you said about the children's writing, that's kind of also what amplified, you know, the weirdness of it all. It added, I think, fuel to the fire of my psychological unravel, because you know, was thinking I'm meant to be a children's author, you know, I'm meant to be in this blinky plonky rose tinted world. Of course, now I know that's not the truth at all, and we shouldn't even be writing stuff like that for kids anyway. That's not the real world, and there is knowledge and power, you know, wisdom and power, in the truth, and knowing that dark stuff is possible.
So really, before you were pregnant, and even when you were pregnant, you didn't really have any depression or issues. Life was going along. You were this children's writer, loving the world of immersing yourself.
I just thought I was lucky, you know. My friends would say, oh, I've got depression, I suffer with this, and I would be honestly like fascinated, you know, look at them in a kind of social anthropology kind of way, like, oh, what's all that about, you know? Well intentioned, but honestly, I wouldn't have said cheer up, but I wouldn't have really understood it, you know. I might have said, just try and change your bedroom around, you know, and then you might feel better. And then experiencing what I experienced, you know, I said this, I'd had a podcast the other day with one of my friends, and I just said, you know, I needed it. I needed this. Like, this has actually been, it was really well disguised, but it was a gift.
Yes. So talk us back to when it all started, because the pregnancy was okay, really, wasn't it? The birth was very traumatic when you gave birth to your son.
I had a really lovely pregnancy, you know. I think I'm sure many people will relate to this, but being in the arts, especially having my own, I mean, I still don't even feel like okay to say my own business, but being my own boss, you know, being in charge of my days and everything, I do often feel like I'm a fraud. I sort of feel like I'm winging it from day to day. And being pregnant was like, oh no, I am employed now properly for 10 months. Like, this is what I'm doing, you know, and like, I don't need to worry about that or this because I'm pregnant. I'm doing the main life thing. Mm-hmm. And that gave me like enormous capacity and freedom to be kind to myself and take my kind of foot off the pedal and just be able to enjoy it. Not in a deluded way, you know, I wasn't like being completely romanticizing about it, but I was just like, felt safe. Mm-hmm. And then had a very traumatic labour, 2 weeks overdue, where pretty much everything that could have gone wrong went wrong. But, you know, many women do have traumatic labours and don't go on to have my illness. Mm-hmm. Many women have, you know, healthy, normal births and go on to get extremely unwell in the same way I did. And then basically within 3 weeks, I was hospitalised in a psychiatric ward. I had no idea who I was or how I got there without my newborn, and woke up on Mother's Day without my little boy Jet. Yeah.
And it's the description that you write so viscerally, really. I kind of felt your book. I didn't read your book. Oh. It was like your energy coming off the pages. The guilt you felt, the anxiety, the insecurity, the conspiracy theories, the paranoia, believing that the teddy bear was watching you, or that your partner's father was actually trying to hypnotize you. Can you explain more about where your mind went after you?
Yeah, so I think that it all began, I've had so many theories. That's why the book has helped me so much. It's saved my life, you know. If my brain does that thing as everyone's brain does, I'll literally just watch MasterChef and then it'll go, hey, do you think that conspiracy was actually, there's some truth in that? Like, even now that happens, I just look at my book and I'm like, it's all there, you know, forget about it, let it go. And actually I gave myself insomnia after being ill, going back, thinking about
sleeplessness. The
sleeplessness was out of hand.
I wanted to pop you in a pram and take you for a walk.
I could have done, I would have, oh my God. Woo! Basically, so when did it start, basically? And other women that have had my illness, Catherine Cho in her book Inferno, which you should also read, it's remarkable. She has this question. She's like, when did it begin? You know, did this happen? Was this always something that was inside me that was always going to come out? It was just waiting. And the birth just triggered it.
Hormones and everything.
And my mum will sometimes say, no, you know, leading up to the birth, you were quite manic. And I was like, no, I wasn't. I was just nervous. You know, you always have these, when did it start? But I definitely think the expectation of like an anticipation of being 2 weeks overdue, of carrying something that you become aware. There's a moment when you are aware that your baby is also a human within their own right, and you're carrying something that then is very important, not just to you, but to Hugo, his dad, to all my family, to all Hugo's family, but also they're a member of society in their own world. So So for example, literally shoving something up your fanny, not to get to you, to get to him, you know, because he's a patient, and you become like, oh, you feel so like a vessel. One of the book original title was going to be The Broken Oven, because that's how I felt. You know, I sort of felt like I was making this cake for everyone to enjoy, and
an incubator.
Exactly. And once he came out of me, I was kind of there on the side of the road, you know, cooling down on my own, thinking, what the hell was that? My labour was extremely intrusive. You know, I had my waters manually broken with this hook to find out they'd already been broken, and they scratched his head.
That wasn't nice to read either. That was awful.
I was stretched and swept, and, you know, then he was kind of torn out of me after all these forms of labour. So I think my body was kind of sent to a shock, a sense of shock. But I do have a memory of sort of feeling like at one point in the hospital, my body just kind of levitated, almost 80s movie style, you know, out of that bed. And I think there was just so much bad news coming at me about my health, his health, that I just kind of checked out.
Yeah. So as if it was happening to somebody else's body.
Yeah. And I think that's kind of a survival technique, right? It's like, I understand that now, looking back.
Because if you connect in at that time, it could have just even more overwhelmed you.
Well, I remember just being super quiet. You know, I was such a passenger in my labour, and like, I'm the sort of person, if I'm not happy with my meal at a restaurant, I'm going to complain, you know. And with this, the biggest thing in my life, I was just going, okay, going along with it. And then, so also sleep deprivation, there just isn't a chance to sleep. We were on the ward for a week, so this kind of fear, a sort of hidden, imaginary, invisible clock just felt like it was there, ticking down to something really bad happening, whether that was Jet dying, me dying, my milk running out, my blood running out, and then what was real and became fears, imaginary threats. I started to lose the difference of what was rational and what was irrational.
The sense of reality really slipped, didn't it?
Totally.
And not knowing what was true and what wasn't, and who to trust. Your sense of trust
just left. And that is the maddest thing, actually, because being on the planet, you know, for 30 years before this, I felt like I had a pretty good gauge and understanding of who I was. You know, getting to 30 anyway is like, whew, an achievement. And then suddenly, you know, when I was in the psychiatric ward 3 weeks before, you know, I was normal myself. When I mean normal, I mean myself, not a normal person, me. 3 weeks afterwards, I don't even know what tea I like. I'm staring at tea bags like, oh, I don't remember what I had for breakfast. I don't remember what I put on my toast, you know. This is the sort of effects that you expect people to have when they've come out of a coma or something, that you hear about in that kind of way, not from having a baby.
Mm-hmm. And you ended up in the psychiatric ward because you had thoughts of ending your life, didn't you?
Yeah, definitely. And on many different threads, you know, it was... some of them I'm very proud of, actually, because I don't look at it, you know. It's like, if someone is going through, before you experience a suicidal thought, I mean, it is like nothing else. It is a terrible sensation, but there's a part of it, you know, I would have maybe thought it was cowardly or selfish, and when you are experiencing it for yourself, there can be a logic behind it, a rationale, you know, if you are in serious pain and you can't describe or visualize that pain to somebody else. People jumped out of the Titanic, you know, they believed something bad was going to happen. And there's a kind of ownership and agency in that. Plus, with psychosis, you lose, as you say, all trust, all instinct in yourself. You are scared and you are dangerous, potentially, and you don't know what you're going to do. And so some of my suicidal thoughts were within my psychosis, but some were me, my strong undercurrent as a human who's never had a suicidal thought before in their life, pulling that self back, going, you could do this in a way that you could potentially cause less pain or fear. And that bit, even now, I stand by that, you know. I'm like, there's something in there that's logical to me, that is still me in a weird way, trying to still be a good mum.
Mm-hmm. And how many weeks did you end up staying in the centre, the psychiatric ward?
So I was there for 2 weeks, which actually is quite short. Not that we compare recovery, but for an illness like mine, I think looking back, my conspiracy theories and delusions sort of managed to get me out of there. You know, I was kind of had this big plot in my head that that Jet was going to be stolen and I was going to have this custody battle. I became
not wanting Hugo to visit at times, your partner.
Definitely not. I lost faith in absolutely everybody, and I mean, I've known Hugo for over 15 years.
Yes, you
We've
met as
been best
teenagers. It was
friends.
a lovely story.
So it's just now thinking, I don't trust a single word this guy is saying. And it's so sad talking to somebody who's in psychosis, because you just can't win. You're in trouble if you just can't say the right thing. If you go along with the delusion, you'll ramp it up. If you completely deny the delusion, you become somebody who that person can't trust. So it
But
takes
for you were
of
so
experience.
caught by it that was your logic at that time.
And also sometimes the illness can make you think you know better, or it makes you think you can see into the future, or it makes you think that you've seen all this before and you're the only one that's wide awake. And the thing that I'm really proud of is that I spoke about it the whole time. So there was always somebody that I would go, let me lay it all out to you, because I urge anybody who is listening to this to talk. That's what Hugo said. The only insight we had was to listen to whatever you said. And my thoughts were changing so quickly. I would try and write them down, then I'd forget them. And I think my experience of writing actually is what helped me, really. It didn't ramp it up. It helped me try and catch them and understand them and explain. And that's how I got the medication and the help support that I needed.
And were you writing your book alongside when you were going through the psychosis, or you were just writing your thoughts down?
Not when I was going through the psychosis. I mean, I was so unwell, I couldn't do anything, and time would lapse. I was writing down, but I mean, no one would probably ever want to read that. I don't even know what it was. And then I had conspiracy theories that nurses would be listening to me. I felt like I couldn't write anything down on paper. I thought I was this, like, at moments, like a kind of the worst, case they'd ever seen, the most like darkest, evilest person they've ever seen, when really I was just like a 31-year-old girl wearing cupcake socks, like flopping around, thinking that I was really big and scary. So I kept a lot inside. That was hard as well, banging and crashing around my head, just thinking, I don't know why I'm here or when I'm going to get out. And then I became scared of writing, actually, because I thought, I don't want this thing that's happened to me, the shame. I know we spoke about this before, but the shame and the guilt and the fear of it coming back is just as big, if not bigger, than the illness itself. I'd actually felt I could cope with the illness better than I could with the after effects.
And when you talk about the shame, what is it that you're ashamed of people finding out? Or what did you think then?
I'm not, not anymore. Now, bloody, I won't shut up about it. What did I feel? That I'm like the stereotype kind of tabloid visions that we see of sensationalized versions of people that have mental health problems or issues, or what postnatal depression looks like, what psychosis looks like. So kind of, they're different, but like a postnatal depressed person, someone very low B, and maybe you're a baby killer, or you're running around in a nightie looking for your baby, or the word psycho just straight away is horror films, and it's just stuff that to me is alarm bells. Now I know that's not the case, that we're not the scary ones, we're the scared ones. Yes. Shame that
it's all about judgment, isn't it? Worrying what people will think about you.
Worrying what people think about you, especially anything surrounding a baby, is just extra sensitive. You feel like you're already a bad mum, and that you're going to basically ruin your child's life before they've even had a chance to breathe in air, and you think that's your fault.
Yeah, that guilt is just hard one to come, to walk through, really, isn't it? It's really hard to walk through guilt. And coming home only after, as you say, a relatively short spell, a couple of weeks, you weren't instantly cured. It was still a journey to your recovery. So what really helped in that?
It's funny because when I first was hospitalized, the first feeling that I felt probably was relief, like, oh, I don't need to try anymore. I don't need to put on a brave face and pretend that I'm okay. And that's what I'm thankful for, that my illness was so bombastic and huge. Everyone had to go, well, okay, all hands on deck here.
Yeah, because you had people sleeping over, your sister,
my house was like Glastonbury Festival.
Your mum.
Oh, it was chaos.
An eye on you.
It was chaos, complete 24-hour suicide watch. Yeah, horrible, really horrible. But then coming home was like the opposite of that. I thought I was going to feel real relief coming home, and it was just being thrown back into the scene of the crime. It was the same, incense sticks and smell of soap and smell of baby, and just that whole house again just brought it all back. And I think because I'd been at hospital, which was such a I mean, as I said, I've never even taken a paracetamol before, you know, so to come home dosed of all these drugs and this experience being hospitalized and not be fixed was like a double kick in the teeth, you know. And it felt a little bit, no one did this, but in my brain it felt like everyone was going like, come on TikTok, like a baby needs you now, like you've already been away for 2 weeks, like I was away in the Maldives or something. I was like, oh, I've got a place to be, you know. And then that just became, you know, the side effects of the drugs also, they take their toll. They're incredible, but they take their toll. And I wanted to do my mum stuff. I wanted to be responsible, and I wasn't allowed on my own for a week with Jet as well, by myself.
How must that have felt, knowing that, well, I guess it's about trust again, really, isn't it? That you couldn't be left alone with your son.
Hard. That was really hard because I think more probably for my partner. But I was just like, you know, even if he'd cry, and actually you forget a baby is kind of meant to cry. It's healthy for them to cry, so they cry and then
speak, really, isn't it?
Yeah, and then I'm panicking, thinking he's crying. Does that mean I'm doing something wrong? But actually, it's more worrying if he's silent. Like the silence was weird too. So no one was a dick about it, but it was hard, and I think I just was desperate to feel the normal things that normal mums felt, you know. Oh, I want 5 minutes away from my child so I can have a bath, so I can make a cup of tea or watch my favorite TV program. I was thinking, I'm desperate to feel naturally exhausted like a new mum. I don't feel those feelings, you know. That was the weirdest things. I don't know how anyone that copes with depression on a long term sort of scale is just, and when people say it's weak, it's the opposite of weak. It is daily weightlifting.
The courage to do that every day is immense, really, isn't it?
Huge, unbelievable work.
So when did you feel like you did turn a corner? You know, how long after you had come home from hospital?
Yeah, when? Well, I think actually the book had a lot to do with it. I put a blog out when Jet was 6 months in the August, and that was more because exactly what we just talked about. I felt like I wanted to steer the reins back a little bit. You know, I knew people had known that I was ill. I knew people had known that I was hospitalized. I think it was also for myself, because, you know, I needed to set myself free. I didn't like the idea of feeling like this illness had crushed me, and people were saying things, really well-intentioned things, like it wasn't you, it was the illness. But I started thinking, no, this is me, you know, my body. I didn't just take loads of drugs and go on a 2-week bender, you know, and then I couldn't, like that. All I did was have a baby, and then I got unwell. So I was like, for me, I felt shortchanged by the answers, you know. I wanted to start a conversation, and weirdly, the more people that I started speaking to were going, oh, I didn't have what you had, but I didn't feel okay. I had to go on antidepressants, or I felt suicidal, or I felt alone. And then I was thinking, why did nobody tell me this? All everyone told me about was that my fanny might split and that my boobs would feel weird and I might not fancy.
You didn't even tell me that you bleed after you have a baby. That really surprised me.
Me too, especially after a cesarean. Yeah, especially after a cesarean. I was like, I didn't even have them that way, and yet what's going on here? You know, just tricking me all the time. So that I kind of wanted to just set myself free with that, but actually it did the opposite. And the next day it went viral. The next day it had like so many hits, and the irony, all you ever want when you're a writer for your job is for your work to connect, and it had connected, and I couldn't even leave my house. You know, I was so wrapped in, oh God, that voice just came roaring back going, oh, what do you think you're going to do? Like, go on, I'm a Celebrity, get me out of here for postpartum psychosis, you know, all that. And then we got offered to do the book. And at first I shied away from that. It was a lot of umming and ahhing, like, can I do this? Can I not? Hugo was like, and I just didn't want that story to infect especially my children's work. You know, I didn't even want it on the same space. And eventually I started picking up my phone, you know, and Jet was on my chest sleeping. And the more I started writing, the rewards, you know, just came. Like I just started healing. The more I began talking about it, writing it down, understanding it, processing it. And the day my book came out, I honestly felt like I was walking down the aisle with my illness. I was like, okay, it's me and you now. Like, and I hold it so close. I'm surviving. That is the proudest thing I've ever done, you know.
Yeah, I think when we give it oxygen, you know, when we shine a light on it, it really helps us, but it helps so many other people too.
Totally. And talking about it is not to get it off your chest, it's also to build a conversation. And actually you do end up getting bored of it. It's like a miracle. It's like this thing I was so scared of. Now it's like, oh, that old thing.
Yeah, but you're going to be speaking about it quite a lot because your book is out now.
I know.
And fingers crossed it's been optioned. So hopefully we may see it as a series or a film or something. So it's going to be out there. But I think, there's like a whole, as you said, unspoken world of women that have really suffered terribly after birth. And it's not spoken about, it's hushed about. And by speaking about it, you can end that shame and you can end that stigma for so many people.
I think the shame probably is what, gave me that. I think I was already there, but I think the shame slapped that passport in my hand and went, off you go to madness, basically, because it
failed as a woman and it failed as a mother.
Totally. And you feel, and it adds to the paranoia and the conspiracy, you start thinking, why has everybody else managed to do this and I can't? I don't get it. And it has nothing to do, it has absolutely nothing to do with who you are or how much money you've got in your bank or how prepared you are or how much time you have, or what really matters is that you have the support, that you ask for help.
Mm-hmm. And can we talk about Hugo? I think we need to clone him and send him into households. What an amazing man. He just never, ever, ever gave up for you. And that it was just like, unconditional love. That's really my definition of him. What a special man.
He is that. He truly is that, what is he? He's just, I think his tolerance, his like capacity for like terror and fear and panic and is just ginormous. This is a guy that like just before Jet was going to be born, asked me if he was going to be born with teeth. Mm-hmm. He didn't know, he didn't know how to raise a new he's gone from like being in a band, touring across the world, and to then suddenly that same bag filled with like a bottle and muzzies and newborn baby clothes. And I was the one that acted like I was I'd be there, I had my stuff together, I'd be the one to look after the baby, and he was to support me. And that love actually was my biggest medicine. It really was. And him supporting me and watching it all happen, it's been a real thing for us. I feel like we can just cope with anything now, endure.
Well, that tsunami didn't break you up, so absolutely
not. We just got married this year, actually, so on Jet's birthday. So yeah.
But what really came through in the book when you talk about that love was your army of love. You were surrounded by light and love, by your sister, your mum, your dad. I mean, they were separated and they got together. You're really free.
I know.
To support you, not together again, but they were back with you. All of the people that supported you and never gave up. It was just so important to see that support.
Thank you. I went back to the hospital, actually, which I was terrified to do, but whilst writing the book, and two things that really stuck out. The first was that they said, nobody ever needed to ask me if I'd had a history of mental health, because it was written across my face that I was in this really dark, scary place, and that always frightens me. But also they said that the love, and support that I had is what they truly think is what got me better, and not everybody has that. And that just frightens me so much, because to know that you as you say, you lose all your compass, your sense of awareness, and people just there repetitively with the patience to reassure you that you've not done anything wrong, that you are loved, which is why the book is called What Have I Done? Because I honestly believed I had done like the biggest crime in the world, and people just going, you haven't, and asking for reassurance is so exhausting, for the person that is there supporting. But they did it, and now I'm the person that can reassure them when they're not worried, and when they're worried, and I never thought it would go back to that again.
Yeah, you're an example of you can go through this storm, or more than a storm, but you can come out of it as well. So for anyone listening, can you just really explain as best as you can what postpartum psychosis really is?
Sure. So postpartum psychosis is a maternal or postnatal mental illness which follows. It can start before birth, or during, but usually in the first few days, weeks after birth. It is considered a medical emergency. It's not something that you can just live with. Mm-hmm. It is treatable, but 100% treatable, but you will most likely be medication and therapy that will support you, so not to be thought that you can just get through with a meditation app. Symptoms include, oh, they're lovely, delusions, conspiracies, racing thoughts, mania, euphoria, but I didn't get any of that, sadly. Suicidal thoughts, depression, anxiety, hallucinations, and insomnia. Everything nobody wants, basically, all at once whilst looking after a newborn. And as I said, it's completely treatable, but just nobody knows about it. It's about 1 or 2 in every 1,000 women that get it. So,
and do they understand why somebody that had no history would get it?
no, they don't. There's still lots of research, and Action on Postpartum Psychosis are working really hard to try and, I suppose, get to the source of it. There's 50% research suggests that it's, you can inherit it. 50% says you're more likely to get it if you have suffered before from depression, or if you have bipolar or personality disorder, you're, more likely to get it. And again, 50% chance from following a traumatic birth or a pregnancy illness. So they maybe say now that I showed signs of potentially having preeclampsia, but nothing enough to make me go along and have it. That said, women have preeclampsia and they have traumatic births, they don't go ahead and have it. So it really is just a roll of the dice. I got a chance to speak to the leading professor in my illness. He researches my illness and bipolar disorder, and I got a referral to speak to him. He's based in Wales. I had all these questions, why me, and he just said it just wasn't your day. And I was like, oh. And in a way that helped me so much, because it made me just
it wasn't
feel like
personal then, was it?
It wasn't personal. It was, and actually recently somebody said, oh, that must have been frustrating, because it would have been nice to have a diagnosis, because then you would have had a bit of control to ensure it doesn't happen again. And I was like, no, the trap is to think that I had control in the first place. I didn't have control, and my recovery has very much come from accepting that and letting myself completely blow away with the wind and see what is left, giving into it. And that's when you eventually land somewhere, you really do, and then you can rebuild.
And do you have your own theory about yourself, why it happened to you, or do you just believe it was just not your day?
I do believe it wasn't my day. I think I am not, I broke my wrist before, and it was broken for like 3 days, and I just coped with it. I know I have an extreme tolerance. It's not about strength. I don't mean strength, because that's a whole different matter of what that ridiculous strong woman pressure is on women. But I mean, at a pain threshold, I know I can tolerate that. I know I can cope with panicked situations, with crisis. But I do just think all these things at once just came together, and I think there's things I would do differently if I was given another chance. Not regrets, but I certainly wouldn't be as much of a passenger. This is not a time to jump in the back seat when you're having a labour, when people. By the way, I just want to say, this is not against the NHS. Like, they've been incredible during this pandemic and what we've gone through, but there were moments when I should have gone, I know this isn't okay, even as a human, even as a patient.
It's easy to look back though and reflect, isn't it? When
exactly.
you're in at the time, it's so hard to do that.
Exactly. And your life is in someone else's hands, and how do you know?
And it's your first baby,
you know?
so
Exactly.
you trust them.
Exactly.
Yeah. What advice now would you give to anyone that's either struggling, they're listening and they've just had a baby, or someone that's a family member and they want to support someone? What really helped you, I guess, at the end of the day?
First of all, as soon as I got rid of saying goodbye to blame and shame and guilt, as soon as I did that, I thought, I'm such a person that says sorry for everything and takes responsibility for everybody on my shoulders. I'm a typical big sister, goody two shoes. As soon as I did that, my recovery it was like a new wash. It like filled in 60%. As soon as I went, wow, I was like, okay, I'm not responsible for that. It is not my fault. I take as long as I need to get better. I remember a doctor just saying to me once, for argument's sake, what's the rush? What are you rushing for to get better for? And I was like, oh yeah, like there's no deadline. No one meets you at the end when you come off your meds with a bunch of flowers and puts a medal around your neck and says, well done, you did it. It's your journey. Ask for help. Don't hide it. Don't believe you know better or the illness knows better. You will get better. If you're dealing with somebody or supporting somebody who is unwell, help out, don't help out where you can. So little normal things, make tea, make sure the air is getting in, change bed sheets, don't ask anything of them, don't say you'll cheer up.
Food in the fridge.
Put food in the fridge.
Mama.
Exactly. And if it's with a new baby, you know, and you want to help out, it doesn't help to take the baby from the mother's hands. I would say, you know, make a shepherd's pie, hoover up, charge their phone for them, but make sure baby stays with mum.
So really support you as much as they possibly can.
Exactly. It's treat somebody else how you'd like to be treated yourself, because what you learn from all this, which we've, you know, I'm sure your amazing podcast is all about, is that nobody is immune. You know, me getting this illness is the same as being hit by a car. It's the same as being fired or getting a cold. Like, none of us are immune.
Absolutely. But I think the best advice for everything, let go of the shame, the blame and the guilt.
Absolutely.
What a perfect way to end. So Laura, I just want to thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule. And
oh no, thank you.
Wish you all the best with everything.
Oh, you too.
Hope we see your fantastic book. If you haven't read it, people, go out and buy What Have I Done, which is not sugar-coated in any way, but it is a fantastic and actually a very important book to read. Really important book.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Unbroken, the podcast, with Madeline Black, playing now on all the main platforms, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher for Android, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, and here. Play Unbroken, the podcast, with Madeline Black.